Didn't Lawrence Welk grow up in Strasbourg?
Mm-hmm.
Was he like somebody that you went to school with, or did you
No,
know him? He was older than you.
He was a lot older than I was, but see, he was gone already before I really, by the time I became a teenager, he was gone already. He wasn't there, but when he started coming back, you know, I got to meet him a few times, and my sister, he was there for her graduation exercise. He was their guest speaker. When she graduated in '76, he came back, and she danced the polka on graduation night on the stage. You've got a picture of that. I mean, I went to school. We had a 3 miles one way to school. And the first snow, there was no way, because like I said, my dad didn't have a four-wheel drive pickup. All he had was a sled and 4 good horses and a truck. Well, the truck was just used when they thrashed to put the grain on and unload it. And first snow, we had to go with the horses and sled already. And I said, that was a long way, 3 miles going. And I said, my mom had one of those big downfilled covers that she made. They put all, they had geese too and ducks, and they picked all those feathers and dried them, and that's what they made their beddings, thickings out of, or downfill they call them now, downfill with feathers in, it's called downfill. She made one of those, and she used this heavy, I don't know what kind of material it was. I think it was almost like denim, She sewed it, and she filled that up. Dad put straw in the sled, and we'd lay down in there, and he'd cover us up. And, well, the girls wore boys' pants, underwear, long underwear, and the strap bib overalls, the flannel shirts. My mom sewed the shirts, and like I said, we had long wear underwear just like the boys. We were dressed just like boys, or else we would have never survived, And so then we slept underneath there. We laid underneath there until we get to school, and Dad would turn around and go back home. And I said, and in those late 40s, early 50s, when we had all that snow like we had 3 years ago, 100 inches, well, we had that for how many years in those years, And I said he barely got home, and the wind would come up and storm like you wouldn't believe it. Well, we couldn't stay at school. There was nothing to eat there, no place to sleep. Well, we had a teacher that stayed there, but she just had a little room, there was heat there. He turned around, come back, and he got us, and we went home. Sometimes you could not see nothing. I mean, you couldn't see nothing. And he would just put the reins loose. He put them around the top they had the post on the sled, real loose, and he just let them go. All of a sudden, they stopped. We were home.
Wow, that's a cool story.
And we never knew where a road was. We went cross country. I mean, they say a horse will never get lost. Once it knows it's a direction, it will never get lost. And, I mean, you talk to a lot of older people, older than me. They'll swear by it. Because that's what survived them. So that's kept them alive.
You had to milk before you went this 3 miles to school?
Well, see, our school didn't start till 9 in the morning. We didn't have like now, there was, so yeah, we milked. I mean, after we got older, we helped Dad milk. Mom stayed in the house and packed our lunch pails, made breakfast. We came in and we ate, and Dad took us to school. And then he came back, and then he fed the cows. Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to backtrack just a tiny bit again back to because you were Catholic, you didn't eat meat on Fridays, but fish was okay.
Yep,
and
fish
so you
and
said
noodles.
you had a fish and noodles. You said there was some guys that kind of came around and gave you fish.
His name was Glenn. One was Glenn Woods, and I even got to know his great granddaughter. She got married to a guy from east of Hazelton, and I didn't know any of this until I started working school, and she would come in, and she was an aide in there, and she started working in school, and we sat down. I don't know how we got on the subject, They weren't Catholic people. One was a Woods and one was a Nelson. I don't remember. I think it was Chris Nelson. One was Chris Nelson, and the other one was Glenn Woods, I think, were their names. And when I started working in school, like I said, we sat down one afternoon. She had lunch with us. We started talking and visiting. And I said, you know what? She started talking about, Woods and this and that. And I looked at her and I said, you were a Woods? And she said, my mother was a Woods, my grandpa. And I said, well, where did they live? And she said, well, my grandpa, she said, but my great-grandpa was a fisherman. And I said, he was? And she says, yeah. And I asked her where, and here was her great-grandpa that brought us our fish that Dad bought when we were little.
And then once they quit, then you said you guys went out fishing.
Well, they quit because they were, older people already then and that stuff. And then when they quit fishing, the water got so high, I guess their boats, they just had these little canoes that they would go out on, And, then finally they just quit. I guess people got to get their fridges and freezers, See, and then this stuff started coming into the stores. They could buy. Well, you could buy fish in the stores then too, because some Catholics, none of them could eat meat on Fridays, so that was something you could buy in the stores. But they were shipped in, and they came in big crates like that, and they were all in ice, iced up and stuff, and you could buy smoked fish. I remember Mom buying smoked fish. And like I said, but when the electricity came in then in the 50s and stuff, and then people, could start, they started going out more as hobbies, fishing, and when the hunting started, which there was nothing years ago. My dad never hunted. He didn't know what hunting was. All he did was when we had all that snow in the wintertime, the pheasants, they couldn't find anything to eat out there. And my dad always planted what they call sugar cane. And that had long tossed, and it was really fine seeds. Oh, what could I say? What could you see now? What was that kind of seeds almost? Almost like celery seed. That size, really. And it was dark. See, and then when the cows ate that, it would fall out. And, we had pheasants. Hundreds of them come in. And they were just, when you looked out, the earth was moving under those cows, how those pheasants were in among those cows and picking up those seeds. That's how they lived. And then we had a lot of trees, so they went and they roosted in the trees at night and come out in the daytime, And so my dad went out, and then he cut himself a hole out big enough so he could put his rifle out there and could look through on top of the rifle, and he would shoot them. We had pheasants, oh my gosh. We were cleaning pheasants. Finally, Mom said, this is ridiculous. We're not cleaning all of them. So we just took the breasts towards last. We gave the cats and the dogs, took them out and fed them. Finally, they were so full they wouldn't even eat them anymore. So then we had that sometimes for us. That was something different for us, but that's all Dad hunted. He never knew to go out hunt pheasants or deer. You didn't have them at that time because, they had all that river bottom. And after that, reservoir got put in, the dam got put in the 50s. See, all that water, it changed everything, and a lot of land went underwater.
Did you lose any land?
No, we were too far away, but we had a really good friend. They had to move their whole farm out. They lived in the river bottom, and the government bought them out, and they gave them so much, and they said, well, you can move it, or it's going to go underwater. So they had to move all their buildings out up on top, out of it, and they lost a lot of land. He lost a lot of land then, yeah. We knew a couple of people that lost their whole farm when that all happened.
Can you tell me what crops did you guys plant on the farm?
Wheat.
It was all wheat?
It was wheat and oats. That's it.
Okay.
And a little bit of corn. It was, and then like I said, my dad planted wheat, oats, corn, and like I said, sugar cane. And that was bindered and shocked, and so was the oats. And the oats was thrashed, and then the sugar cane he hauled home for feed, as in the wintertime where that was stacked and fed. And then and the corn, he picked all the corn, and that was fed to the hogs. That's how he fattened them out and stuff, because that's what we made our living, was on our cows and our pigs.
Do you mean that you sold them to somebody else?
Well, the cattle, the calves were sold to make money, and the hogs. My dad had about 12 sows to ferret out. We had like close to 200 little pigs, and that's what then he raised them. In the fall, we sold them.
Did you make head cheese when you butchered your own hogs?
Yeah. We made head cheese, liver sausage, and regular sausage. Yeah.
And then when you took your, you mentioned earlier something about you took 700 or 800 pounds of your own wheat in to have it ground. Did you say
my grandpa did?
Your grandpa did. So where did they grind that?
He took that. There was a mill at Tenvick. They at one time.
Tenvick, that's right.
They had a mill at Tenvick, and that's where my grandpa would load up the wheat, and he'd drive up there one day, and they grind it and put it in bags, and come back the next. Where they stayed, I don't know. I never did ask. I never did ask. See, I was 10 years old when my grandma died on my dad's side. I remember her a little bit, you know. And, but that's what, you know, I remember my dad talking that, yeah, Grandpa would take the See, my dad bought it, you could buy it done already then.
How many
800 pounds.
You went through 800 pounds of flour in a winter.
Well, you got to realize there were 6 kids of us, 6, and Mom and Dad and Grandma lived with us. And then, like I said, my mom didn't buy a cookie. We don't know what bought cookies were. My mom baked all the bread, and like I said, she made like all the different kinds of noodles. She made some kuchen, I used that for kuchen. She made fried bread, and then she even made what we call caramel rolls now, but they were made different. She just took the bread, rolled it out, and she would put thick cream on there, with heavy cream, and then she put cinnamon and white sugar on there and sprinkled raisins on there and rolled it up and cut it, and she'd set it in a bread pan. And then when they were raised, she just took like your kuchen now with your cream and eggs and sugar. She mixed that together and she just poured that over the top and baked it. And then that set up in the bottom just like your caramel dust now on your caramel rolls. And then we come home from school and that was our dessert.
So what kind of special, do you remember anything special that you had for like Christmas celebrations or Easter? Any special foods that
Easter
you
it was the kuchen, because, you know, she baked a little more kuchen for that. And dyeing Easter eggs.
Did you still have eggs? You had hens that laid all winter,
yeah,
right?
we had all our own eggs, you know, and stuff. And then we would dye. She dyed. I don't know. You buy the dye at that time. It wasn't like your food coloring now. It was some egg dye. I mean, I think you can still buy the egg dye. She would buy, and then we'd dye the eggs. And then Dad would, when we were small, like 6, 7 years old or so, then he would stick them in his pocket, and then he'd make sure he'd lay them out there so we'd come across them. And the Easter egg, we found Easter eggs, you know. But my mom dyed them, so we didn't know it. We didn't do it like the kids do now as a family thing. My dad would take us, or when we were at school during the day, when we were gone at school, she would dye them, you know. Or when we were smaller, when Dad would take us outside or go somewhere with us, the neighbors, then she would hurry up and dye her eggs, you know. So we didn't know that you could dye eggs. We thought the Easter rabbit brought that. And the same thing with Santa Claus like that too, you know. I mean, we had Santa Clauses that came around. We had Bill's books too. You know, and they were mean. They were not like these now. Oh, come and sit on my lap and hug you. What do you want for Christmas? They came in with chains and bells and the Beelzebub came in. He had a great big sheepskin on and cap or those big fuzzy old caps they had that they'll tie in the bottom and the flap down. I mean, all you could see was this much because the flap was down. He had this tied, and they had a chain around his waist, and the Santa Claus would hold him, you know, and he wouldn't talk. Sometimes he would jump at you, and oh God, we were scared to death. Oh my God, we hated Santa Clauses. We hated that with a passion.
What was the point of the guy with the chains?
Don't ask me. Were you good or were you nice or something like that? And if you weren't nice, he said, well, if you aren't nice, the Beelzebub's going to take you with, you know, or you know, Santa Claus the same way, you know. He'd hand you a present, you go up there and you, and where you go, you know, and then he'd hand it to you, then he'd pull it back, and
So does that mean you didn't really like Christmas?
We weren't too fond. We liked Christmas, yeah, after the Santa Claus was gone. And then once I was bigger, it was fun because then I was part of it, see? Because we would go around caroling. There's 5 of us then. 3 angels, we would dress up as angels. And then we had, the Santa Clauses were a lot better as we got older then. We weren't, I mean, I don't know why that was so strict in those years. I don't know. But I mean, then as we got to be teenagers, and then my mom made us our angel dresses. We had long dresses with the big sleeves, and then we made our angel wings out of cardboard and decorated them and everything. And we kind of could fasten them underneath our dresses then, and then we would go as a group, the 3 angels, and usually it was 2 Santa Clauses, and we'd go farm to farm, out in the country, not in town. We had a few that asked us, but it was basically out in the country, and the angels would carol, and then Santa Claus would hand out the gifts and stuff, which I said it was a lot better than when we were way little. Oh, I'll never forget some of those. They were horrendous. I mean, there's older people that don't know about this besides me, unless I come from an area.
Yeah, maybe it was just
a certain area. I don't know.
Down there. So how about like homemade root beer or?
My mom made it. She made homemade root beer. So did my mother-in-law. I made it, but I went through a recipe, and you made it and you put it in the fridge. It didn't taste like the really homemade stuff.
So did you picnic at all in the summertime?
No. There was
4th of July. Do anything special for that?
No, not the first years. I don't remember when we got to be. I can say when I started remembering 10, being about 8, 9, 10 years old. Dad would take us to Strasbourg to the parade. We would go into the parade, and then after that there was nothing no more. That was it, you know. And then we went home.
How about birthdays? Did you get your own cake or?
Yeah, birthdays. My mom always baked this. We always had our own birthday cakes and stuff. Like we never had like birthday parties like they have now. Have a house full of kids come or something like that. No, we just had the family and that was it, you know. And then what they celebrated was Names Day more.
Tell me about Names Day.
See, like you know, like my mom now, she had Names Day the 9th of March with St. Francis. If you had a saint's name, and then when that day come, well, then people come, and it was just like they celebrate birthdays now or whatever. They'd get together, people would come for the names. Say, oh my gosh, my mom would bake cookies and kuchen and all kinds of stuff she'd make and stuff to pass around and stuff. And Dad would buy, you know, he had some wine, he made some wine, but he never made his own beer. But they would pass around the wine or homemade whiskey. My dad made a lot of that.
Tell me how they did that.
The wedding wine, the wedding whiskey, Hochzeit Schnapps. Well, my brother still makes that, and so does my brother-in-law. They are great on that one. They kept that tradition going. That tradition they kept going. Oh yeah, they make. I've got the recipe, but I've never made it. That's what the biggest drink was the whiskey, the homemade whiskey, and whoever made wine, you know. My dad only made it once or twice that I remember, choke cherry wine, but not that much.
So what else was, like when people got married, that you remember was a special thing that they made besides, they made a wedding kuchen, they made the whiskey. Was there anything else that was
That was usually specific? Your 2 basic things. Those were usually the 2 basic. Because when I got married at 10 o'clock in the morning. And then we had dinner and supper. Well, they all did. They all got married in the mornings at that time. And they got married any time of the week. There was no just a Saturday afternoon wedding, that there was just a reception, supper, and dance. This was any time of the week, and it was at 10 o'clock in the morning already, or 11. Well, basically, most of them were at 10 in the morning. And then you had dinner, and then all afternoon, and supper, and all night. And like I said, for my wedding, well, then we cook butcher chickens. And we had kuchen and noodle soup and chicken for dinner. And pie. We made pies. And we did that all. And then took it in there, and then we hired 2 ladies that did the cooking. They cooked, you know, you had ladies that did cooking for weddings, and you know, it was popular at that time. And then they cooked the chicken, they made the soup, and we had the kuchen and soup, and then I think it was hamburger and rice, the old-fashioned people that made that. We had that, and then for supper we had sausage.
Just plain old sausage? Fried potatoes, or?
Well, I think we had sausage and mashed potatoes and corn, I think we had for supper then, and the wedding cake. That was supper. Well, leftover pie, whatever was left over then, and they set the chicken out, whatever was left over, and yeah, and then they served the red eye. They passed that around. Well, I don't even know if I think Dad bought beer, because Madeline's Blue Room was at that time. Madeline's had the bar in the Blue Room, and then they gave it to you cheaper because you rented the Blue Room, you know, and you could walk between there and stuff. So I don't think Dad they passed around, I think maybe a little bit in the afternoon beer, but I don't think that much. It was basically a red eye. That was about all it really was. And like I said, and then they started playing, the orchestra played right after dinner. They played all afternoon, and then they played all night. And it's like I said, we had the white Mike, what was his first name? Wyko was his last name. He had a band. He played. He passed. I think they all passed away already. There isn't even any living anymore. And so then, like I said, they charged us $75 for all afternoon and all night till 1 o'clock in the morning. They played. Yeah. I mean, those were weddings. Not to what my mom. Now. She made candy. She made everything. She made homemade candy and like I said, she made this one kind of candy the boys are always talking about. That was their favorite. It was mine too. And I said, sorry, brothers, I've tried. I cannot make it. It will not turn out for me. And it was made with dates. And it was, I know she used cream. I've got the recipe. I said, I wrote it down. I've got it. But I just cannot. It will not work for me. I said, I don't know. I said, it won't set up. But she cooked it. I know she had dates in there and nuts in there. And then it was almost like a caramel. It was with, you know, it tasted like a caramel. And then she would wet the dish towel, and she would put it in the pan, and she poured the candy in there. And then she'd let it sit, and then when it was set, she'd take it out, peel the cloth off, and then she would slice it. You know, she poured it in, and she rolled it up like a jelly roll with this wet cloth. And then she left it set, then she sliced it, and it was almost like a pinwheel cookie, about that size, not quite as big. And then she rolled it in coconut. And, oh, was that good. Oh, that was so good. And I've tried it. I said, I'd make it gladly for you guys, because I like it too, but it won't turn out for me.
Well, what's your favorite German meal? Do you have a favorite?
Well, like I said, I like anything canned meat. Like I said, hams and sausage. That's what we grew up with, basically, you know. And stuff. I like chicken. I really didn't have anything favorite. I liked ramdungus.
And what are those?
Cream chicken.
Oh, okay. And tell me, you mean like fried chicken and then you just pour...
You just boil it in broth, and then when it's done, then you just take a little flour and a little sugar, and then you put cream in there and make it like a paste. And then you pour it in your boiling water, and you boil it, and then till it gets a little thick, and then you sit it and put your home-baked bread, your bread in it. You separated your milk. And then you just take it and you poured it in a kettle, enamel kettle. Now you couldn't have anything metal because it would tarnish or I don't know. They said the milk would do something with the metal, or the metal do something to the milk or something. But you had all your enamel kettles. That was all enamel. You didn't have anything else. So what we did then is I filled a 5-quart kettle full of milk. Separated milk, left it set out on the counter 2-3 days, and it was grizzly, thick, sour. And then you set it on the stove, and you turn it on, and you watched it very closely. So when it got good and hot, when you put your little finger in, and it got really good and hot, then it was done. Then you took it out, and I left it set a little bit, and then you poured it through a strainer, or even what they call a cheese bag. You poured it in there, and then you just tied it and left it sit so all the water drained out, or well, if it didn't all drain out, left some drain out. Then you laid it over, and you laid it flat down and set something hard on top to press it. See, that it took all the liquid out of it. And then you just took it, and I just took it and I put it in containers and froze it. And then I could take it out to make cheese kuchen, cheese buttons.
So tell me how you make your cheese buttons. After you make them, do you fry them or do you?
I cook them in water.
And then
my family liked them that way, and the reason I did it that way, I boil them, and then I just put them in a pan, and like I said, melt butter with breadcrumbs and pour it over. See, and then what we didn't eat then, I just took the next meal, and I took a pan out with the butter that was on there. I just put them in the pan, and then I heated them on both sides so they got a little crust. Then we eat them that way. That's how I heated them up then. So I always would boil mine. My kids liked them that way, and then I fry them, which for leftovers we fried them.
How to make those apple dumplings?
Oh, well, that's so easy. There's nothing to it. You just take I peel it, cut it, just cut it in 4 squares. That whole apple, I just go this way, you know. And then I put about 1.5 cups of water, and I'd say about 1/2 cup. It depends on how tart your apples are. If they're tart, I'll make like 2/3 cup of sugar, and I take about a tablespoon of butter and put all that in there, the water, the sugar, and the butter, and then I bring that to a boil, and when the water starts boiling, I lay my apples in there, and then I cook them for maybe 5 minutes in the meanwhile, but I now I use a loaf of frozen bread dough, because when I baked, I just, like my mom did, they just took some out then. And then you just take a cut chunk off of your bread dough and you roll them, and you make them about like this. And then till you got the loaf all used up, and I got a big pizza pan, and I just grease that, and a loaf of bread with the noodles will fit perfect on there. I mean, one loaf. And then I just roll them out, and I just space them, and I lay them on there, and then you let them rise. And when they just start rising a little bit, that's when I start my apples. And then I let them rise so just a little bit, you know, let them rise, maybe a fourth of what they were, because you roll them tight, they maybe like this, and then I'll let them get about like this, and then I just lay them right on top of those apples, and you cover the lid, and you let them cook for 45 minutes till you think their water's, I listen when you kind of hear that the water's cooked in, and then you take them and you stir them, and then those apples are all mushy like applesauce in the bottom, and that caramels your dough then. They're good. I mean, they Dumpfnudler. They make Dumpfnudler that way, but they didn't put, my mom didn't. My mom never made noodles really with potatoes, except the Schnittner noodle. Now, you know, the regular narrow long noodles. Right? That's the only thing that my mom used potatoes in now. I know she just puts water in a pan too, and lard and a little salt, and then she puts the potatoes in and puts these noodles on top, and she cooks until they get crusts. But my mom never made that. My husband, or my father-in-law's name was Peter. She says, yeah, his first load of grain he'd take to town. She said then he'd come home with boxes of fruit, peaches and pears and plums and all that stuff, and then she would can that, and then that's what they used. They used the plum juice, and then they ate the plums for sauce and dipped the juice in that. So we used prunes. My mom used prunes. And
so you must have bought all your pickling spices and stuff from the grocery store, right?
Yeah,
that was something
they had to buy. Yeah, I think that must have been something you could buy too, because my mom never. That's all I ever remembered. And well, when I got married already, that was out a long time already. But I don't remember my mom making anything else with it. I mean, she just, and like now when I got married, moved up there, when they put their meat in Ryan now, they added brown sugar to their salt water. They said it gave it more of a kind of a different flavor, maple flavor, like whatever, you know. Now they would add a bag of brown sugar to the last pail of water. She added a 3-pound bag of brown sugar. See, my mom never did, but that's what my mother-in-law did.
And how about for yeast? Did they buy yeast, or did they
that goes out. The yeast was out too at that time. Yep, I never, my mom, well, some of them, my mom never did, but I did know some of the neighbor ladies, how they would start, you know, they would add, like, how they start this Herman dough, that everlasting, whatever they call it. That's basically like what they started it with what was it, flour and water, and what else they put in? Salt. Left it set on the counter, but once they had it started, see, then they always kept some in the fridge. They kept when they had fridges, and then they would put it in the fridge.